What screams pretending to be upper class? I work at an exotic car rental branch. I have plenty of customers that rent our cars and ask us to take the tags off the keyring. Understandable. Then I have some that insist they get the same license plate each time and will flip out if I give them the same model as usual but with the plate one digit off. They're trying to make the appearance to whoever that they own the car and get themselves in a trap where they have to keep renting to keep up the illusion. That charade never lasts long. Taking out loans to get your family on a little vacation. My friend is doing this. I told him to save up for a trip like that. Apparently stuff around the house is stressing both him and his so badly with their kids that they are fighting over taking out $20k or $30k to go on a vacation. One vacation, then it's back to fighting and whatnot. Absurd. Imagine knowingly going into debt to go on one vacation. They both work too, which is even more baffling. Saw some guys at a stoplight in a convertible 6 Series BMW with the top down blasting music and wearing expensive clothes. I can see his dashboard. Every possible warning light was on. To be fair, in a bimmer those lights probably came on the day he bought it. Wearing brand clothes that have the huge name of the brand on them. I used to work in one of the brand stores and these were literally made for the lower class that wants to show off. More expensive and higher quality items never had this flexing on them. As a poor, I've noticed that less is more when it comes to casual fashion. Rich people on Instagram are probably mostly fake rich, buying followers. If I were a billionaire, I would not want to be tagged partying on a yacht, especially not in 2020. The only rich people that like to be tagged on their yachts are stupid kids and celebrities that make a living off being a public figure. Most mega rich people that can afford a yacht don't want people to find them through social media. Talking down to working class people. Don't get me wrong, there are definitely snootier upper class people, however in my interactions with them as a working class person in services they've always been extremely nice. My guess is because we both know who we are in society, so there are no pretensions. Fake upper class people have to completely reinforce the class divide. It had to be absolutely clear that they are and always have been above you. Part of me thinks it's resentment at what they might have used to have been, and the other part thinks it's how they think other upper class people behave. We don't get anything that scream pretending to be upper class in Australia at the moment. Thanks to our mining sector, at the height of the boom, someone could leave high school, get some tickets, and pretty much walk into a 6-figure job on the mines. So the young man driving around in an expensive muscle car while covered in tattoos, slabs of beer in the back, may not be pretending, but could be a cub, cashed up bogan. When every item of clothing you're wearing has a designer logo on it, real rich people don't walk around looking like billboards. Shopping in the curtains aisle of Walmart and openly declaring to me, an employee trying to zone, that we have no taste. I wish employees were allowed to sass back at stuff like that. I used to be concerned about how I looked dressed when going to a high-end retailer. Now I simply don't care. If they won't serve me when wearing jeans, then I'll just go somewhere else. Talking about how expensive everything you have is and how much money you have. I've found that truly wealthy people don't feel compelled to talk about it constantly. A friend of mine said that a woman she had to deal with would spend $20 on something worth $10 and then tell her she spent $30 on it. When people act all rich but they've never even staged a South American coup for better tax rates on their fruit plantations. Getting married in a big fat wedding by taking out loans, borrowing from friends, plus getting super expensive rings when you can't afford 1/10 of it. My uncle and his wife are perfect examples. They bought a brand new Mercedes that they can't afford, live in a house that's too big for them, bought a caravan in a park where the ground rental is nearly $50k a year. They bought their kids expensive butt bikes that were never used, and what did they use to pay for all this? If you guessed credit cards, then you are correct. Credit cards and loans from my grandmother which they will never pay back. Then they make fun of my mother and I for being working class. Might as well spit on my grandfather's grave since he was working class through and through. Yet, financing a lifestyle is insane. Going into debt for luxury items is the craziest thing people do. Definitely buying cars you can't afford. I'm solidly middle class and drive a Ford Focus. Don't buy one. They're crap. And a lot of people I work with that make less than I do roll in driving big expensive trucks or Mercedes cars. If I can't afford that, I know they can't. I'm a teacher. I'm a bit surprised by what I see some of my colleagues driving at the various schools I go into. Far too many luxury cars for it to the spouse paying for it. I heard salespeople at high-end shops can tell immediately if someone was actually wealthy in places like Rodeo Drive. Even if you dress up nicely and walk into a high-end store, they could pick you off as a normie. I work, freaking covered, at a high-end restaurant. Most of the time it's super easy to tell. In saying that though, whenever Mel Gibson would come in he was dressed like a hobo and could have easily been mistaken for one. Buying expensive clothes, or fake ones, and owning a high-end phone, but you stretch your budget to do this in order to make it seem like you can afford excess when you really can't. And then not getting those expensive clothes tailored. If you are gonna buy the fancy clothes, spend the extra $sign to make sure they actually fit. Dang it. Oh, actual upper class story. Have a wine snob friend coming over for a party. So I bought a cheap obscure wine, like $10 bottle, and when I cashed out I asked them to take the sticker gun and put $80 on it. My friend thought it was an amazing bottle of wine. I had lots of customers like that. They'd gush over our house wine, and tell their dinner friends how special it is, the amazing taste, etc. Basically trying to act like a wine snob. I used to get a sick pleasure, telling the folks at the table that it was box wine. Posting pictures of your fancy cars and house renovations, shoes, etc. on social media. Real rich people don't actually have to scream I'm rich to be rich. Most people do that for the attention and views, not because they are rich. Simply talking about money and how much things cost is a way to brag and show others your wealth. I grew up fairly close to my cousin. He's 6 months older than me, and his family, and they are what I consider to be truly wealthy. My uncle was a very well-respected dentist who built his practice up from nothing over a 30-year period. He retired in the last 5 years. My uncle grew up in a dirt-poor farming family and never flaunted his wealth when he became wealthy. He didn't buy a new sports car every year. He still drives the same sports car he bought 15 years ago. He didn't wear flashy designer clothes. He still wears expensive clothes though, and you'd never know he was a millionaire if you passed him in the street. He owns properties all over the province, for hunting and net worth reasons, owns a mansion in the Bahamas on the beach, and takes trips to Europe yearly. You wouldn't know any of those things unless you knew him on a personal level. On the other side of my family I have an uncle that would be considered upper middle class. He always had to have the fanciest toys, the newest models, etc. and everything was as a competition to him. My parents bought a new Cadillac before they retire and of course he had to purchase one as well, except it had to be better, so he bought a CTSV within a month of my parents so he could be better than my parents. He also has to brag about his traveling, telling us of the fun he had in Vegas last week, the exciting trip to Mexico he's taking next and so on. In my experience there's two types of wealthy. There is the truly wealthy class who are humble people that make smart decisions with their money and don't treat it like a competition. And there is the faux wealthy class who have to try and flaunt their wealth in the face of others as a way of keeping score and ensuring that they are perceived as winning. I love this. Our family friend is a very successful venture capitalist, owns like 7 houses all paid for in cash in Hawaii, Bay Area, etc. 90% of the time I ever see him, he is wearing collared sweaters, jeans and his 8-year-old Reeboks. His wife and him both drive Volkswagens. You'd never know this guy's net worth. When I sold cars for 5 years the people with the worst credit income finances were always trying to stretch to buy the most expensive and newest car. They were the easiest to impress with new features, special colors and performance specifications. The people with the best finances were always looking for a basic Corolla or Camry. They were usually replacing a 15-year-old Toyota they handed down or sold online. After having that experience, whenever I hear someone say they special ordered a special color or that there's only X amount of this car made, I just think to myself that they are a sucker and probably have bad credit. And when I see someone driving an old beat up car I don't automatically think they are broke, but instead I think they are probably hoarding cash and have a nice retirement ahead of them. buying an inflatable hot tub while living in a trailer park. South, just bought an inflatable hot tub and live in a trailer park. Putting other people down for having less expensive things than they do. Like just because it's not expensive means that it is worthless. Those people need to shut up. Knock off luxury brand anything. Usually watches, bags, wallets, clothes. There are plenty of respectable, elegant things that look and work just as well. You're not tricking us. And you're not tricking them. The people who swim in those lanes all the time. My ex comes from a really, well, kinda fricked up family. Her dad is a multimillionaire who cheated on her mom and wound up leaving, and was by all accounts not a great husband, father, or man. But after he left, my ex's mom became a professional alimony hound. She never got a high school diploma and worked part-time as a hairdresser, but was a single mom in a house that must have been worth $1 million plus. It was clear based on the way she spoke that she was living paycheck to paycheck on gross child support and alimony checks, funding a lifestyle that would disappear completely if something happened to her ex-husband. Her home is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Multiple formal dining rooms, mismatched hardwood furniture everywhere. For some reason every TV is hidden in a closed closet, etc. But the weirdest freaking thing, is that there are no clocks in the house. 25 mirrors. There's not a spot in the home where you can't find your reflection, but you never know what time it is. I'm not sure if that's a direct answer to the question, but I thought it was related. My boyfriend tried to convince me that if I bought a KitchenAid that we'd need to leave it on the counter so people would notice that we could afford to spend $250 on a kitchen appliance. I would love to have one, but I don't bake enough to justify it, and if I ever get one it's going to be stored when I'm not using it because I hate clutter on my counters. Mine stays on my counter because it's too dang heavy to move around frequently. I do use it pretty regularly though. My aunt has a house in a really expensive area of Dublin, D4. She speaks as if she was born in that posh area. However, we're from a crappy little village in the middle of nowhere in the middle of County Limerick. My uncle and father speak with the local accent. She and her children live off Aldi ready-made meals while she buys expensive designer clothes that spend most of her salary. She also gets my grandfather to pay her rent. Also, her children don't always have shoes that fit them or even are a size too small. They're often tiny on them. Started reading this thinking, well, at least she's budgeting to fund her clothes. Read further on. Surely that's borderline child abuse. Most people that you look at and say wow they must be loaded are likely living beyond their means. Basically anyone talking about how much money they have is pretending. My friend works at a bank and he says this all the time. All the time they will see people pulling up in a Mercedes, Rolex, and name brand clothes only to have less than $500 in the bank. Meanwhile, they will get a dude who pulls up in a beater truck with just plain clothes who has $3 million in the bank. Money talks, wealth whispers. I have always liked this saying. A lot of people with real substantial wealth, you don't hear about too much about it from them. I like these people. I like to add new money screams. Making sure you have the best of everything: expensive car, top of the line everything, luxury vacations twice a year, while barely living paycheck to paycheck, subtly working into conversations the expense of things you own, refusing to eat at a restaurant with less than 4 stars because those other places have trashy customers. People with everything high-end brand name, Mercedes car, Beats earphones, the latest iPhone, etc. All while they live in a crappy 2-bedroom apartment they share with their cousin for the last 5 years, while working a mediocre warehouse job. If Beats are high-end, then frick it, I'm out. Also, dang Americans, if I work at a mediocre warehouse job I can barely afford a beat-up Kia and a Xiaomi phone, not a Mercedes and an iPhone. I work at a bank. My clients who earn in the $100k, $200k range are mostly, not all, but mostly, freaking pretentious twats, while the ones earning $1 million are lovely, humble people. Just my personal experience, but have worked there for over a decade and this holds up pretty well. So, conspicuous consumption, ugly big houses, flashy things, diamonds, gold, handbags with labels, leopard print clothes, fur, branded goods, Too much plastic surgery. I think I'll stop here as it's not making me feel like a nice person. I feel as though my mind just flashed through most of Essex. According to the culture of my country, women wearing crap ton of gold jewelries and men wearing blazer suits everywhere, even if the temperature is through the roof. Only talk about money and brands. I had a scholarship in one of the top-notch schools in my country and you could understand who is upper class really, who is faking. 1. Fake ones. You this brand. You that brand, my chauffeur brings us blah blah blah. We've been to a. 2. Real ones. I am gonna take the subway and I need to work to this to that. Let's go camping. Like I did not know one of my friends were rich until he invited me to his family's boat. They are really our upper class and they use money as a gear, not a purpose. Anything Supreme. It's crazy. Supreme marked bricks are selling for $1,000 on eBay. There's a kid at my school who's a walking Supreme advertisement. So much of the stuff he's wearing is branded and is always bragging about how rich he is. He's not. He just cares enough about looking like it that he's willing to spend money he doesn't have. It's kinda sad tbh. So my husband and I grew up in the same area with dads who made about the same amount of money, middle class, and stay-at-home moms. But our upbringings were very different. My husband's parents were terrible with money. They tried to look upper middle class. They made poor financial decisions trying, like refinancing their homes and using the money to buy new TVs and go on vacations they couldn't afford, eating out multiple times a week, never buying generic anything, always shopping at Nordstrom and Macy's. As a result, they are now penniless and living in the same home they bought in the 80s. Like, it's exactly the same as when they bought it, and my Mill still doesn't understand how to be financially responsible. She takes cruises every year, and multiple trips to Disneyland. Meanwhile, she is underwater on her home, almost 65 and has zero money put away for her retirement. On the other hand, my parents shopped second-hand, pinched every penny. Our vacations were camping trips. My mom saved money buying generic everything. Taught me how to grow our own food, patch clothes, cook meals at home instead of eating out. We had chickens and would sell their eggs to neighbors. My mom worked as a janitor on the weekend. They didn't care about appearances. They just put their heads down and planned for their future. They did refinance their home as well, but they always put the money back into the house, putting a new roof on it, turning the garage into a bonus room bedroom, building a large shop in the backyard, bumping out the dining room. As a result, the home they bought in the 80s is now beautiful and worth $500,000. They have investments and a large retirement. They have a lake house they spend the summer at. My dad could leave work anytime and they could live quite comfortably. Don't go broke trying to look like you aren't. Look broke while saving for your future. This is the truth, right here. When you drive a fancy car and wear fancy clothes but come into an auto shop and want to get the $20 basic oil change instead of the $30 oil change your manufacturer recommends, refusing any other work to be done, and at the end of it all complain about the cost. For your information, basic is 5W30 conventional, the rec was 0W20 full sin. Has anyone said, renting a mansion and being behind on payments for your Ferrari so you can trick a gay redneck into selling you his zoo yet? I grew up in an upper class home and we drove second-hand Volvos from granddad. My mother was up to her eyebrows trying to get tax levies passed for school programs and the library in paint-spattered clothes. My dad worked a 60+ hour work week providing low-cost healthcare. We thought Dolly Parton was the epitome of someone who was pretending to be upper class and we loved her every move. Everything I've heard about Dolly's character and behavior screams class to me. TBH. Not upper class, but class that transcends economics. I don't think she ever pretended. She just had a sense of style that was very specific to her personal history. And I say this as someone who learned there were pants not made from denim when I was 17. Nice brand new car financed for 7 years but think they are hot crap for having it. Is the 68 in red a good thing? So here's a bit of a story. There was this mocking hot Colombian girl at work a few years ago who took a liking to me. We're talking an easy 10, possibly such a 10 that scale was altered such that former 10s have been downgraded to 8s in comparison. She was always perfectly made up, wearing business attire that was just enough to be sexy, without breaking dress code. but my chronometer was going off in a major way. Buried the needle. So I thought with my upper head and kept things professional. Well, seeing as how I wasn't falling for her, she turned her attention to some other guy who kinda looked like me. Evidently she had a type, and he went in head first. It was hot and heavy, and she basically got her hooks in deep. Got him paying for everything. All her bills, rent, everything. After a few months when he could barely pay for his own stuff because he was supporting her, he got his crap together and broke things off. She had a minor meltdown at work and ended up being let go a few days later. After the dust settled, it became clear that she was the queen of the gold diggers. She supported a lavish lifestyle, a 5-bedroom house, a Mercedes and a BMW, expensive clothes and jewelry, etc. because she'd managed to bleed every guy she'd ever dated dry. Dwelling on past achievements, I've got a friend who constantly goes on about how great the British Empire used to be and how his family were all grand aristocrats and navy commanders. He's a good guy at heart, but I think he was brought up to believe he was better than most others. The humble brag under the guise of a complaint. I can't believe how bad the champagne selection was on my flight. I expected so much more from KLM first class. My brother-in-law is the king of this and everyone in the family wants to murder him. I don't understand how he doesn't see how transparently pathetic it is. He's not dumb. Always having the newest iPhone Samsung device, but always with a cracked screen. I'm so rich I can afford these nice things, but I just can't afford anything more to fix it when I drop it. I've worked at a private golf club and a luxury hotel too. One thing I've noticed is that there are two minds of rich. The first are those who think they're rich. These people are dismissive to those serving them, picky about what they eat, and will always demand an upgrade to the best room in a hotel. As an example, a guy who checked into the hotel with me became furious that I didn't know who he was, or who he worked for, despite it being my second week there. When he went up to the room, he called back down and screamed at me that this was not his usual upgraded room and that I wasn't good enough to serve him. The second kind are those who know they're rich. These people are the best and kindest people, because they don't have to prove anything. We had a couple stay with us in our hotel who were so kind to us. They were VIPs, but we were unable to upgrade them, to which they laughed and said don't worry about us. There are other people who need the space. They memorized all our names and bought us all gifts when they departed. We only found out that we're filthy rich when they mentioned in a passing conversation that owning 11 houses involved too much paperwork. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.